Hello and welcome everybody, and thank you guys for joining me into another Shadow Arena guide. My name is Wilkie and we're going to be talking about the combat system again because there have been changes and revisits have happened. So I'm going to be talking about a few changes here. The biggest change, or the elephant in the room, has to be the stagger change. Prior to a few patches, auto hits staggered you out of everything, including other auto attacks. This is no longer the case, and what that means is if we have this Goyen with slow swinging left mouse buttons, we can now trade blows. As you can see, his auto hits and my auto hit combo non-cancel each other out. This is a huge change because this allows slower heroes to still be able to perform moves or retaliate and deal damage, whereas prior to that, even auto hits just staggered you out of everything. Heroes like Goyen or other heroes with slow moves or slow skills had a very hard time getting hits out. This is a huge change, and this is very important to understand, especially as a new player, that auto hits no longer cancel each other out. However, skills will still be cancelled. For example, if I use Badal and have his Helix charged, a Goyen left click will interrupt it. So this is something to keep in mind. Auto hits will no longer be cancelled by each other. Auto hits, however, still cancel other abilities. This is very important to understand because that means you can still get cancelled out of your unprotected moves, or if you use them in the wrong moment, you can still be cancelled out. Let's get a little bit into the terminology. So what kind of got introduced in the game was something that is called Stiffness Super Armor. And what Stiffness Super Armor means, you will not be CC'd or interrupted by weak attacks or auto hits. For example, if I just keep punching this Goyen here, he can still just do his kick fine. Boom. There's no way I can cancel his kick with auto attacks. Likewise, if he starts swinging at me, we can just use our F and it will not be interrupted. So kick got sort of like a major buff because it no longer gets interrupted by weak attacks and auto hits. However, skills still interrupted. As I said, this state is called Stiffness Super Armor, and the only two things that it protects you from are auto attacks or weak attacks. Weak attacks, for example, are Goyen Spin, and I can still just shoulder strike into that one. Or I could have just auto attacked him out of that. We can show you that in a second once the cooldown is over. But generally, moves that have no CC on them, Goyen Spin, Ahon's Chains, Herawens Chain Lightning, for example, all these moves don't CC until the very end of the move. So weak attacks like this can be countered by a kick or auto attacks. As far as the other trades goes, there hasn't really been much of a change. Super Armor is still a thing. This blue glow here means you have Super Armor. Auto attacks will not be able to cancel you out of Super Armor. There are, however, some moves that do. I'll show you an example just right about here. So, if we take a look, for example, at Lan's first ability, Winter Petal, it has something called Ignore Super Armor. And you pretty much guessed what this does. If this Goyen has Super Armor gone, boom, we can pierce through that. So, while Super Armor protects you from a lot of moves, not every move can be countered with Super Armor. Namely, abilities that have this effect listed on it, Ignore Super Armor. Also, abilities like Schultz's Grab, Hagal's Grab, or Badal's Grab will also counter Super Armor. And for example, any other ability doesn't have anything like that. So, for example, Death's Crossing only has a guard break. And if we do that again, you can see that even though it has guard break, the Super Armor worked against it. Another defensive trait is, well, the so-called defense, namely only available to Jardine and Venslar. Technically, Badal and some other heroes have a few forms of frontal guard or defense as well. Those two really are the main kickers though. For example, Jardine can hold down his shield, and all the auto hits or any other move really will hammer into the shield until his shield gauge is broken. However, we already talked about this, moves that have the guard break property, for example, will get through that. For example, if we have this Jardine hold his shield down, and we're going to charge with our first ability, Skull Crusher, it will go through. Same thing pretty much applies to the grab. He holds down his shield, boom, we can grab him through that. And we can also show you Tagal's fourth ability. Just charge it. Boom, shield, super armor is gone, and there we go. So defense, while it protects you, it can be broken by sheer amount of damage or certain traits that allow you to break guard. So this is important to understand. Most heroes have at least one form of guard break. There are a few exceptions to that, but defense is not the all omnipotent defensive stance there is, because it can still be countered, namely by grabs or guard breaks, and guard breaks is sort of a relatively common thing in the game. Also remember, you can just break through it with enough damage. So another thing, or the last thing about the defensive traits, more importantly about super armor, a lot of people don't know this, super armor can be used to counter Herawens freeze. So if we have Goyen do your right mouse button again, that neither the freeze nor the dagger will actually have an impact. As you can see, the bull icon popped up, and Goyen is fairly free to do anything. So freeze also is blocked by super armor, as I said, only moves that have the so-called... Herowen is one of the few heroes that, for example, doesn't have any of this. Only moves with either ignore super armor, actually counter super armor, and for the defensive trait, only moves with guard break actually allow you to penetrate it. This is all about in terms of actual CC mechanics and things that changed. As I said, stagger mechanic is a huge thing, and this is how the defensive traits work. The last thing that I want to talk about is the Q rework. Q now, as you can see, does a guard break, it ignores super armor, and it has a knockback in an AoE range of 250. So if you're close by to someone, if we take the Goyen example again and have him use right mouse button, if we Q now, and after the shadow explosion, not when you use it, but after you get out of the black spirit, you will knock back enemies. And that doesn't matter if they have super armor or anything. The only thing that protects you against Q is an iframe. And iframes, we talked about this, they didn't really change. We have shift roll for certain heroes, for example, Ahun Kyros have an iframe. Generally though, it's no longer possible for heroes with super armor, namely Goyen and Badal, that were able to outplay others by tanking the dark shift with their super armor. This is no longer a thing. However, Q is a little bit unreliable right now, so I'd be very careful about that. Generally though, if people grab you, even if Schultz has his buff on or whatever else, you can now Q out and have them staggered backwards a little bit. As I said though, not always very reliable and can backfire. This is it as far as my new combat guide works. I hope it's a little bit shorter than the last one. Anything else, as I said, feel free to let me know in the comments, and hopefully this may help some of you, especially new players, but also veterans, to clear up some of the confusion. What the defensive states are, what protects against what pierces what, and how all of these effects work together. As I said, this is all for this guide. Hopefully it was helpful, and I will see you guys either next stream on Twitch or on the next video on YouTube, or maybe even in-game in Chat Arena. So keep your heads up, and I will see you guys next time.